Put your hands up if you want to see governments doing more to help elephants and rhinos. Excellent. Well, you're in the right place to make your voice heard. It's great that you've all come out today. Horrible weather, but great turnout. We've definitely been seen on the streets today. And now what we've got for you is some great speakers, okay? After the speeches, we've hired a pub just down the road, 5 minutes away, called the Old Star. You can come and join us for a beer. Some of the speakers, hopefully all the speakers will join us too. Just a chance to dry off and to learn a little bit more. We'll have a sign saying this way to the pub, so look out for that and follow us, 5 minutes away. So, dry off and get wet. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first speaker. We've got 4 speakers for you today, and all of them have given up their time to come and share their expertise and to share their passion. So give them all a big welcome. The first one is Dominic Dyer, close friend and colleague of mine from Care for the Wild. He's been a trustee and executive chair of Care for the Wild. He's a policy advisor for us at the moment, and he's also CEO of the Badger Trust. He's got a long career history at GMFER, MAF, and at trade organisations. He's a renowned public speaker, and he's the country's leading spokesman against the badger cull. And he's passionate about elephants. Well done, Dom. He's also a surprising YouTube phenomenon because of his excellent debates and public speaking. So I'm sure you'll enjoy his speech. So I'll hand you over to Dom.
Thank you, Ben. Well, welcome everyone. This is the biggest wildlife campaign in history. Over 130 cities in every continent across the world today. Millions of people from Sydney, Cape Town, New York to London. Everywhere you can imagine, thousands are marching to protect the future of elephants and rhinos. And this is more important today than ever before. If you went back to 1980, there's over 1.25 million elephants across Africa. The value of ivory in the early 1980s was down to $1 a kilo. We've got national parks established. We introduced an outright global ban on ivory, and we thought poaching was gone forever. But then we saw the greed of mankind return. We saw the African leaders in the late 80s start to put pressure to sell their stockpiles. And then we saw the indifference of the Western leaders to allow it to happen. In 2002 and 2007, we sold into the international market hundreds of tons of stockpiles of ivory. There are many people here today that would have told you that was going to feed a huge increase in ivory poaching and rhino horn poaching. But no one listened. And not only did we feed it into the international market, we put it into China, the most rapidly evolving economy in the history of mankind, where we're seeing millionaires being created every few months in their hundreds, where we knew that the demand was going to go through the roof as a result. And what have we seen? We have seen the worst crisis we ever had across Africa in terms of poaching today. You've gone from $1 for a piece of ivory, a kilo, to over $2,000 today. Rhino horn is now $67,000 a kilo. The toss of a bull elephant, and there are a few of them left today, are worth on average around $200,000 on the black market. We have seen the herds of elephants and rhinos being decimated, probably 35,000 to 40,000 being lost a year, one every 15 minutes. We're losing more now than can be born to replace them. And we're not doing enough to stop this. And it's not just an ecological disaster, it's a human disaster as well, because if you spend time as I have in countries like Kenya, you know that wildlife tourism is probably the most important, second to agriculture, contributor to their economy. People come to the country and spend money to see rhinos and elephants. If the rhinos and elephants are destroyed, they won't come anymore. And also because we're worried increasingly, as we are across the road here, about international terrorism, about Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Lord's Resistance Army, all these global terrorist groups. Well, I'll tell you something. On average, 50% of the money these groups are raising is coming from blood ivory or rhino horn. This is feeding terrorism that is killing us. So this is a national security concern today as well. And we have to do something about it. Now, politicians talk, politicians debate, and to be fair, this government have done more than many around the world to show leadership on this issue. But we're still not making enough progress. We had a NATO summit that we chaired in Newport a few weeks ago, and there was no discussion on human-wildlife conflict at all. Those NATO powers have the technology, the training ability to work with African nations, to deploy equipment, to support their rangers, to stop them being killed, trying to protect these animals, and nothing is being done. We have a huge international aid budget, billions a year that are spent in the UK, tens of billions across the G8 nations, and we spend none of that money on human-wildlife conflict to help people in Africa to protect these animals, and we should, we have to, and we need to. Our international police forces are not doing enough. When people are found to be trafficking in ivory, they might get a small fine or a small prison sentence. We need the weight of Interpol, the CIA, the FBI, and every international police force around the world to be working on stopping the criminal cartels, on stopping the ivory and the rhino horn poachers and traffickers, to make a real difference to stopping this terrible trade. But we also must do more to educate people as well. There's a generation in Thailand, Vietnam and China that believe that an elephant can just lose its ivory in the same way that a deer can lose its antlers. That it won't kill the animal. We need to tell them, you butcher this animal, you take off with a chainsaw its tusks, you leave it to bleed to death in the most horrible way imaginable. There is no way you're going to get this to make your trinkets, to make your ivory goods, without causing huge suffering, pain and destruction of this beautiful species. So we need to educate and inform people. We need to change attitudes, and we can. We need to get the Chinese government to shut down its ivory shops, to shut down its carving factories. And we need to be willing, if necessary, to put trade sanctions in against countries like China that we rely upon for our jobs and our commerce, because if we don't, if we're not willing to take that step, we could kiss goodbye to the future of Africa's elephants and rhinos in the next 2 decades. They will all disappear. Nothing will be left. The greed of mankind will have destroyed one of the most wonderful species that have ever been on this planet. We have a challenge ahead of us, but you're making a difference. Action for Elephants is just a few individuals here in London that have brought all this about through social media. Across the world, we're seeing similar campaigns. People are no longer willing to remain silent. We will stand up. We will be counted. We will tell our political leaders. We will tell our business leaders that the days when we will say nothing while you allow greed and corruption to destroy the future of Africa's elephants and rhinos are over for good. We can save these animals. China can save these animals. Europe can save these animals. America can save these animals. It's in the interests of the countries, it's in the interests of people, and it's the interests of this planet. All of you today should be proud, but you must keep fighting. You must keep sharing your views. You must keep marching, campaigning, telling the politicians, telling the leaders that matter that we must do more. Britain has a role to play. Europe has a role to play. The United States has a role to play. But we must help those African nations to help themselves as well. And we must also work hand in hand with China. Yes, we disagree with it. Yes, we get angry. But we will only influence by respect and by cultural change. And that's something that many young Chinese people believe in and are working very hard. And what you're seeing on the streets of Hong Kong today is a sign that young Chinese people do want freedom, do want democracy, and do want things to be better. And all of us should remember that. So thank you for coming. I really look forward to the other speeches today. You've got some wonderful people here. Remember, I'm really proud that people will stand up in the cold and the wet for animals. We do it for badgers, we do it for targi and dolphins, we do it for elephants, we do it for rhinos. This is a caring, compassionate country. We will show the world that we will make a stand for wildlife. Thank you very much.